Shabbat Shalom. I was in rabbinical school, and sadly one of my classmates fell ill with leukemia. And another classmate gave a Devar Torah about his chemotherapy. She looked at the Song of the Sea, and there's a line in there that says, Adonai ish milchama, God is a man of war. And she said this had always been a difficult verse of Torah for her until she watched our friend, our classmate, struggling with this illness. And then she said, I hope God is a man of war. I hope that God rides through his bloodstream along with the chemotherapy and that he is hacking down the cancer cells. So she found a way to access the difficult text by reading it on a metaphoric level. And I know that all of us have texts in the Torah where we're sitting there quietly on a Saturday morning and we start to read it and we say, ooh, not sure I'm comfortable with this being part of our tradition. This week we read about a war against the Midianites. And as if being the aggressors was not difficult enough, when the soldiers return, Moshe says to them, what, you spared the juvenile males and the women who are not virgins? Go back and slaughter them too. It's a harsh text. There are two ways that I've found to deal with difficult texts in the Torah. The first is to weave it into a larger narrative and to put it in the context of the story as a whole. The second is to do what Rabbi Silver did and read it on a metaphoric level. Let's take this text about slaughtering the Midianites and put it in the context of the entire book of Numbers first. Then we'll read it on a metaphoric level. If we go to the very beginning of the book of Numbers, there's a census, and they save the Levites, the priests, for last because they are to be set aside. They are to have a special task. And what is one of those tasks? We're told that if a stranger approaches the sanctuary, he is to be put to death. Oh, and whose job is it to do that? The Levite. This is not uncommon. Another example of a warrior priest would be the Shaolin priests of China. They are, as legend would tell you, though perhaps not history, the inventors of the martial arts. They upheld the dynasties of China, and there was even a television series that some of you may remember, Kung Fu. Yeah? So part of their role in the society was to protect the people as warriors as well as monks. Okay, but it still seems pretty harsh. If someone approaches the sanctuary, couldn't you just give them a timeout or explain to them that this is a holy place? No, you're supposed to strike them down. So let's look at the word stranger. There are two common words in biblical Hebrew for stranger. The first is a ger, and that means someone who is dwelling with you temporarily, someone who may not be familiar with your customs. But the other is a zar, and that's the word used in this context. And a zar is one who has hostile intentions or is repugnant. A zar is a stranger that's an enemy. Better, still a little harsh in my opinion. The 20th century scholar Jacob Milgram takes a look at this passage and actually this whole arc of narrative in the book of Numbers, and he says, well, the issue was that the punishment for the sanctuary being encroached upon was God's wrath. And so it's the Levites' job to get in there and save the people, because it's not just the sanctuary that's at stake, it's the entire nation. We can see this play out a little further in the book of Numbers in Parshat Korach. Datan and Abiram are helping to lead a rebellion against Moshe, and they say, why should the priests be the only ones who get to draw close to the sanctuary? And a plague breaks out, and it's not until Aaron literally stands in between those who are sick and those who are still well and says, stop, and protects the sanctuary. He steps into that role of protective warrior cleric, and the plague does stop. We read a few weeks ago, of course, about Pinchas, right? The Midianite princess and the Israelite prince have gone into the sanctuary to defile it through sexual actions, and he goes and he stabs them through. Harsh, but if you think about the caste of person he's been born into being, it's his role. He's like the Shaolin priest. And then this week, who should be leading the charge against the Midianites, who, by the way, were the ones that caused the sexual transgression to happen in the sanctuary, which caused a plague upon the people? Pinchas is in the vanguard. He's carrying the trumpets and blowing the trumpets during this war. That's one way to deal with a difficult text, is to say, actually, it's a whole arc of narrative about a certain kind of person. And as we sometimes do in poetry or in literature, we romanticize the soldier. We make that person a hero. Perhaps that makes the text more palatable to us. The other option that I have found is to read it on a metaphoric level. What if the sanctuary we were to protect was our own soul, the essence of ourselves, the part of us that God created to shine? And what if the czar, the hostile stranger, was something that wanted to destroy our very essence? Perhaps it's an external threat, a toxic person in our lives who somehow, whenever we're around them, we are a little bit rusty or decayed. That sparkle that's within us goes away. Or perhaps it's an internal threat, some of our worst character traits: jealousy, rage, being a San Francisco Giants fan. Maybe our jobs is that each of us are to be the Levite, the warrior priest, and to reach up and strike down those zarim, those hostile strangers in ourselves. The Torah is filled with difficult texts, but it was handed to us as a whole. We can't pick and choose what we're going to read. So my hope is that we dive into study bravely with our shields and our swords, and at the end of study and struggle and finding a way to make every text in the Torah have meaning, we can say what the Kung Fu master said to Cain as he was getting ready to journey in the world: "You have learned well, grasshopper." Shabbat Shalom.